this is 3-point perspective. All right, now what we're gonna do is we're gonna create a horizon line, but I wanna create the sense that I'm flying through the air, looking down at the building or the buildings in my scene. So I'm going to raise that horizon line, right? So because if I'm from above, I'm gonna see more of the ground than I am gonna see of the sky. So create a straight line across your page. That's gonna be your horizon line, HL, which is your eye level. It's also where the sky meets the earth. Okay? Now let's add our points of vanishing points to this, right? So I'm gonna put one right here on the right side. I'm gonna put one on the left side as well. And I'm gonna put one below, towards the bottom of my page, between those 2 points. Now from here, gentlemen, what we're gonna start off with is a line below the horizon line, right? Somewhere in the middle of your page, but not all the way to the vanishing point number 3. So we'll label these. The one on the left is vanishing point 1. The one on the right is vanishing point 2. You just can put VP2. And the one on the bottom is VP3, vanishing point 3.
Okay.
You got it. So 3-point perspective, gentlemen. What we're gonna do is we're gonna run a line in the middle of our page, but not all the way to vanishing point 3. So below the horizon line, I'm gonna put it somewhere just above the middle of my page, and not all the way to vanishing point 3. Okay, now I'm gonna put 2 points, one on the top of that line and one on the bottom, and this is gonna be reference points. This is gonna help me to create my lines from that. And now, right now we just have a line, so let's make this into a box, right? And first, we need to define the sides of the box here by creating a converging line from the top of this line to vanishing point 1, and the bottom of this line to vanishing point 1. Likewise, from the top of this line to vanishing point 2 to get the other side. Top of this line to vanishing point 2. All right, now we have a box, or what is coming together to look like a box, but the sides are going off into infinity, right? What we need to do is define the size. Now, how do we do that? First, we need to determine how wide we want this building to be. I want it to be somewhere around here, so I'm gonna create a point on the right side of this top line right here. And on the left side, I'm gonna create a point as well on this top line. And again, you can see I'm not too far apart. And the way we're gonna create or define the sides of this building is by running a line from each one of those points to vanishing point 3. So from the left point right here, create a converging line to vanishing point 3. And from the right point here, converging line to vanishing point 3. You can now start to see the building shaping up. Now, let's erase our extra lines. What I'm gonna do though is I'm gonna save the bottom line here because that's gonna serve as one of the edges of our sidewalk, right? So that's gonna be part of our sidewalk. What I will erase though is this extra line outside of my box that was part of the top. And I'm gonna erase those little lines that just passed the sidewalk down here in the bottom. Again, leaving that bottom line that's gonna serve as part of our sidewalk. All right, so almost there with this building number 1. What we need to do is define the top of that. And the way we're gonna do that is the following. From the left corner, we're going to draw a converging line to vanishing point 2. So from the left corner to vanishing point 2. And likewise, from the right corner to vanishing point 1. And there we go, our building is there. Let's erase these extra lines right here that are outside of my building on the top. Don't need those anymore. And you got a building there. All right, let's continue. So what I want to do now is I want to create a building going off to the right here. And I want it to be shorter than building number 1. So I'm going to put a 1 here. Shorter than building number 1, but longer. So I want it to also be flux with the side of this building, right? I want it to be right next to that side of the building. So I'm going to determine where that building, how tall that building is going to be. I'm going to put it somewhere around here, right? Just above the midpoint of the right side of the building. I'll put a point there. That's going to be the height of building 2. All right, I'm going to create a line that runs to vanishing point 2. Now again, this building is stretching off into infinity. What I want to do is kind of end it somewhere. So I'm going to create a dot somewhere along this top edge of this building number 2, somewhere around here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to run a line. I'm going to create a converging line from this point here to vanishing point 3. Getting there. Now let's erase this extra line right up above here. We don't need that anymore. That's outside of our building. What we are going to need is to define the top of this right here. So I'm going to run a line from that right corner of building number 2 to vanishing point 1. Now that building's really long. Again, I need to define the side, the left side of this building. What I'm gonna do is right on the line we just created, somewhere along here, I want to end the building, right? So what I'm gonna do is right above building number 1, and just to the left of that corner there, right? So just to the left of that corner, I'm gonna put a line, a dot, I'm sorry, along this line right here. So there's a dot right there on the top of building number 2. And I'm going to create a converging line. And I'm not going to create any extra lines. What I'm going to do is I'm going to stop right at building number 1. You'll see. So again, from this point on building number 2 to vanishing point 2. And I'm going to stop right at that building. You see, I stopped right here because I don't need to create any more extra lines. And I'm going to erase these extra lines outside my building. All right, let's create a third building on the left side of this number 1. Now I want to create the illusion that this building is kind of set a little behind building number 1, right? So it's not going to be right along the sidewalk. It's just going to be behind it, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create the first line, which is going to be the corner. And it just goes right above building number 1. Not all the way to the horizon yet. And again, I need to define the side. So I'm gonna, from the top of this new line right here. Actually, I'm sorry. That line, we're gonna erase. We made a little boo-boo. So we're gonna put a point right above building number 1. Right, just above it right here. And below the horizon line. And just to the right of building number 1, right, the corner of building number 1, you'll see the line, the dots right above that corner. Okay, now we're gonna create a line to vanishing point 3. Now again, we don't need to create extra lines. We can just stop right at the building because we know that that building number 3 is behind this front building right here. Boom, and now we have the front edge. Now let's define the sides, and the way we're going to do that is from the top point here. We're going to create a converging line to vanishing point 1 and vanishing point 2. And let's define the edge of this because it's going off to infinity. So again, somewhere along the left side of this line right here, I'm going to put a point somewhere right here. And I'm going to run a converging line from that point to vanishing point 3. So you're starting to see that we've defined the left side here. Let's do the same thing on the right hand side. Let's put a point somewhere between, you could see like between that corner where these two corners come together, somewhere around there, you're gonna put a point. right? And we're gonna create a converging line going from that point to vanishing point 3. But again, I don't need any extra lines, so I'm gonna just stop right here at the buildings, because we know that building number 3, which is this one right here, is behind these two. So from that point to vanishing point 3, and stop right there. Almost done with this building. Let's erase these extra lines that are just outside my building. And let's close the top of this. It's gonna be, you're barely gonna be able to see the top, but since it's below, since building number 3 is below the horizon line, you'll see some of it, a sliver. So from this left corner here of building 3, we're gonna create a converging line to vanishing point 2. And likewise, from the right corner of building 3, a converging line to vanishing point 1. All right, erase any of those extra lines that are just below that horizon line. Leave the horizon line. All right. Finally, what we're gonna do is we're gonna create one more building, and I'm gonna erase this 3-point perspective here so we can fit it in. We're gonna create one more building, and it's gonna be from down looking up. And how is that possible? Because it's gonna be above the horizon line. So check this out. I'm gonna create a point above the horizon line, somewhere above, like somewhere around like the middle here, but just to the right, a point. Right, you can see this is our line here for building number 1, and it's just to the right of that point. I don't like having things aligning too much. I like to have some variety. Now, let's create a converging line from that point to vanishing point 3 to define that front edge. But again, we don't need extra lines, so we're gonna stop right at building 3 because it's behind all these buildings. Right there. Now from this point, we need to define its sides, and we're gonna do that by running a converging line from this point to vanishing point 1, and from this point to vanishing point 2. Same thing on the other side to vanishing point 2. And again, it's stretching off into infinity, as you can see. We're gonna define the edges of this. Now, I don't want my building to go past building number 3. So just above building number 3 and to the right of that corner there, I'm gonna put a point right there on the top line on the left. And same thing on the right-hand side of this building, not quite past building 2, so just above building 2. Another point on that line right there. So we got 1 point here and 1 point here, which is gonna serve as the corners for this building. Now let's define this building's sides by creating a converging line from these points to vanishing point 3. Now, again, we don't need extra lines, so we're gonna stop right here at building 3, because we know that this building 4, we're gonna call it building 4 right here, is behind them all, right? So from this point to vanishing point 3, but we're gonna stop right here. And we're gonna do the same thing with the point on the right-hand side, and we're gonna stop right at the top of building 2, right? So align this top point right here to vanishing point 3. Right, and now the top of our building and the size of our building have been defined. Now, unlike these 3 buildings, we do not have to define the top of it. Why? Because it's above the horizon line, and therefore it's above our eye level. So we cannot see the top. We can only see, we're looking at it from below looking up. All right, now let's erase the extra lines. Now the extra lines are these 2 converging lines outside the building and this horizon line inside the building. We don't need that anymore because this building is blocking that part of the horizon line. We're almost done, gentlemen. There's a couple more things that we have to do. There's a couple more things that we have to do. Now, you guys should have these lines down here. Should have erased these extra lines. Now, remember that we said that building 3, right here, is behind building 1, right? But we're not showing that down here. That's not indicative down here, right? So what we need to do is make it appear as if down here it's pushed back. Now the way we're gonna do that is somewhere along the edge of building 1, on the left edge of building 1, towards the bottom here, we're gonna create a point, not all the way at the bottom, but just along that left edge of building 1, a point here. And that's gonna represent the bottom of this building, you're gonna see right now. So we're gonna run a line from that point, converging line to vanishing point 1. Right? And what I'm gonna do is the following. I'm gonna erase everything outside my building. That also includes that little sliver just at the bottom there. So that little sliver right there, boom. And to the left of my building, this line right here, we just created. Now, this little area that I'm shading appears as if it's pushed back behind building number 1. We're gonna do one more building. Now this one is gonna be a little different, right? It's going to be next to building 3, but it's going to be along that sidewalk line right here. Did we get out of 25 or 10 today? Right, so check this out. Okay, we're gonna do one more building. And again, we're gonna create the illusion that it's over on this side, this is what we're gonna do. We're going to, just to the left of building 3, we're gonna create a point somewhere towards this area right here, right? Just outside of this line. Now let's define that edge by running a line of vanishing point 3. I'm gonna stop at the sidewalk though, right? So I don't create extra lines that I don't need. Now, I'm going to run a line from this point right here to vanishing point 1 to create the top edge. And likewise, from this point to vanishing point 2. Now again, I'm gonna stop right at building 3 because we know it's behind it, so I don't need to go all the way and create extra lines. So just this little sliver right here, boop, right to that dot. Now, from this corner here, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna define the corner, right? This building is it's going off into infinity. So along this top edge here, I'm gonna create a point somewhere right here. Not too far off. Just left of that building number 3's corner, right? And now let's define the top. Or rather, let's define the side here by creating another converging line to vanishing point 3. But again, I'm gonna stop right at the sidewalk because I don't wanna create extra lines, right? So boom. So from that point to vanishing point 3. But stopping at the sidewalk. Now, the last thing we need to do, or one of the last things we need to do for this building is define the top here, because again, it is below the horizon line, so you can see the top of that building. So from this left corner of the building, we're gonna create a converging line to vanishing point 2, but we're gonna stop again at this building number 3 so that we don't create any extra lines, right? So from that left corner to vanishing point 2, but stop at the building next to it. Boom, that little sliver of a line right there. Almost done, gentlemen. Erase this line here that's extra outside of your building. This will be building number 5. Now we need to do one more thing, which is I want to define the bottom of this point right here. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna create a straight line just right across here so that this feels like a little alleyway here. All right. Now let's move on, gentlemen. This is basically